Hi, welcome to another episode of Urban Explorers. Today, we are here at this beautiful house. But before we get there, I need to introduce you to someone special. Hi, Leah.
Hi, Michael. Hi, everyone.
So, Leah is a teacher. And Leah, thank you so much for joining me on this story. I particularly wanted you here because we're talking about a lady today who is, I think, very, very understated in history. Like, people don't talk enough about her. And so to tell her story, it would be awesome to have a lady here telling a lady's story.
Well, thank you for having me to talk about the New York's amazing history.
And to get started, let me introduce you to the place we are in right now. The beautiful building behind me is the Morris-Jumel Mansion.
Built in 1765, it is one of the oldest residences in New York City, and it has 256 years of history.
That's right. And I mean, this place was originally built by a British colonel. His name was Roger Morris. And Roger Morris built this house for his wife and family as a summer getaway. And being a British colonel, him and his wife during the war were obviously British supporters. And then as the war grew closer to this house, they left the house and ran away. But the house was taken over by, firstly by George Washington, who basically had his base here. And it was from here that he organized his first successful campaign. Now, he did it using the view from his office upstairs, where he was able to see the troop movements and also their resupply lines and all of that. Using that detail, he organized the first victory, which was the victory of the Battle of Harlem.
The story doesn't end there yet. The mansion then fell back into the British and the Hessian Army, and later, after the war, it was confiscated by the state of New York.
And what was interesting is, I think, why New York confiscated it. They confiscated it because the building was in the name of Mary Morris. And Mary Morris was born in America. So was her father. Her father was born in America too. And as a result of which, they were considered Americans, or people who were from here. Therefore, the fact that she was supporting the British made her one of 3 women who were considered as traitors. And so as a traitor, New York had the right to take everything away from her. And they did. They took the house. They took everything. They right down to their dogs. Everything was taken away from them.
After it was sold, the house became a tavern. And George Washington at that time, he was the president of the United States. He had dinner, a symbolic dinner with his cabinet secretaries and their wives. After the tavern closed, the property got sold multiple times, and eventually it split up into multiple parts. However, the main mansion and the coach house remained as one unit.
And I mean, think about it in today's money, right? This place was acres and acres. I mean, this place was called Mount Morris, right? So it was so big. It was one of the highest points in Manhattan. Imagine today if we owned a land that was that big. Imagine how much we would have to pay in property tax alone.
Well, Michael, you gotta be very wealthy to own a place like this big.
I know. I mean, that's the idea, right? That's what we want. We want to get rich at some point. But back to the story, and the next person who actually bought this property and owned this house was actually someone that rich. His name was Stephen Jumel. And Stephen Jumel was a wine merchant. He actually also had a coffee plantation in Haiti. And what happened is that his Haiti coffee plantation, he got driven out of there by the slave uprising that happened there. And then the guy ran away from there, almost died, and then ran away from there. And he turns up in New York City around 1793, and he managed to make a life here.
Well, you know who he met in New York City? He met the love of his life. But at that time, he was married when he met her. So, which means she became his mistress before becoming his wife.
And that brings us to the most colorful and interesting character in our story.
Betsy Eliza Bowen. She grew up in a poor Rhode Island family, and her mother was a servant. She also earned some money through her feminine charms, if you know what I mean. Eliza was born in Bordello, and when she was a child, she was convinced that she was the illegitimate child of George Washington, and that drove her to want a better life.
At the tender age of 16, Eliza was already a mom, and she had a baby boy. But Eliza wanted so much more from life, and she wasn't ready to just be a mother at that point. So what she did is she left her child with her mom and she ran away. And from this point, Eliza's story kind of goes a little dark because she falls out of the history books and there is no record of her until at 22 years old, she makes a reappearance in New York City. And at this point, she's working for a theater company. Now, at the point that she makes a reappearance, Eliza is supposed to have gotten to a really interesting point in life, because you have to understand, when she ran away at 16, she was uneducated and she had absolutely no background in any of the arts. But when she reappeared at 22, she's not only educated, but she also has a background in arts, and she speaks French, and above all of that, she's said to have a very, very beautiful handwriting.
It was at the theater they met, and in all accounts, they hit it off instantly. And afterwards, she became Stephen's mistress. Through knowing him, she just realized how rich he was, and she found her golden ticket to a good life that she always wanted. She tricked him into marrying her by faking a fatal illness, and on her supposed deathbed, her dying wish was for him to marry her. And so he did. So after he did, she made a miraculous recovery.
Well, I guess a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do, and particularly when she's trying to get her way in the world, right?
Well, she definitely knows what she wants and how to get it. So when Stephen was in France, she took matters into her own hand. She took care of all Stephen's businesses, and that was way before women can work outside. She also got into real estate business, and she made a small fortune on her own.
And I mean, this was pretty amazing because think about it. At this point in time, women didn't really leave the house, right? They were not known as business minds. But that was Eliza. Now, you'd think that this would be the highlight of the story, right? That Eliza made all this money and made all this fortune. You'd be wrong, because this is just the beginning. There is so much more to Eliza, and there is so much more to this story. If you'd like to know more, all you have to do is click that like button, click the subscribe, and come back for part 2.